assignment 23, and you can see it just has parentheses in there. So, like before, we started off with a, I'll give you a little history first before we begin. We started off with one-step equations, which were looking like this, like what plus 3 equals 4, right? Or something like 2 times what equals 8. And then those are one step, and really quick to solve. And we could do those pretty much in our head. We knew 1 plus 3 is 4. We know 2 times 4 is 8. It's not a big deal. And then we had 2 steps, right? Which kind of combine these, so it'd be 2 times what number plus 3 equals maybe 11. And even these we can look at and say, yeah, 2 times 4 would be 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. Even these we can do in our head, but we, had some steps to solve these. We did the adding subtracting first, simplified, and that could prove our answer. And we really started shifting from, I know what the answer is, and writing it down, to, okay, you know what the answer is, prove it mathematically. So that if anybody else looked at it, they would say, yes, I agree with you. Your work shows and proves that it's the answer. Okay. Then we got into a little bit of combining terms. So we had some combining terms that had 3 to 4 steps. And things started getting a little bit more involved, and we had to be a little more careful about what we're doing. And so we had something like maybe 2x plus 3 minus 5 equals something like maybe x plus 5. And we had to go through and look on each side individually and simplify that first, do 3 minus 5 and get negative 2. Bring everything else down and start solving, get variables by themselves. So we usually subtracted whatever, or added, subtracted any variable on the right hand side. This is a positive x, so we subtracted x, and this turned into either a 1-step or 2-step equation. So we're going to add in another layer, which just involves a little bit of parentheses, but then it's going to just revert right back to what we know. We're going to do the same steps that we have been doing to solve. It's just going to have one new step first. So after the first initial step, you're going to see something that's familiar. And after you kind of get used to this, you can see that every new assignment is really not learning a bunch of new things. You're learning one new thing and reviewing everything we've done already. So it's more, at this point, since we've already learned how to do 4 and sometimes 5 steps, if I add on one more thing, it's really one new step with 4 or 5 steps of review every single problem. So just keep that in mind. It should look familiar, it should feel familiar, and it won't be that big of a leap to be able to solve these. Okay, so going back to the beginning, basically let's review distributive property. There are a few places where you can make mistakes, so it's not as if it's going to be no issue at all, but just keep in mind that this means multiply. Parentheses equals multiplication. So if you see parentheses, multiply. So you have 2 times negative 5v is negative 10v. And 2 times 7 is 14. Bring down the right-hand side. None of these today have variables on both sides. The right-hand side or one side is always just a number. Okay. After that, you can see this is just a 2-step equation. The rest of it is review. Just you know how to finish it up. Start with the adding, subtracting on both sides, and then do the dividing. And of course, you always use the opposite sign when you're doing adding and subtracting because you want to get 0. So if this is positive, I want to use a negative to get a 0. But when you do the multiplying and dividing, you always do the same sign because you want to get a positive 1. So if I want to divide by something and get positive 1, Well, if it's a negative, I have to divide by a negative to get positive 1. So same thing on both sides. Okay, as I mentioned before, this is all just review. Negative 10 divided by negative 10 is positive 1. And 80 divided by negative 10 is negative 8. And for this assignment, all the answers will come out to integers. So it'll be a positive or negative whole number. Well, no decimals, no fractions. Sometimes I put problems on there that are fractions intentionally, so you get used to having that. But when we first start doing something, you want to make sure that we're doing it right. So if you don't get a whole number answer for this, make sure you go back and find the mistake. I will emphasize that we're taking a quiz soon on this, a test actually on solving equations very soon. If you're being graded for this, okay, remember elementary school, maybe a little bit of junior high, this is what they care about. That was full credit if you got negative 8. That's what you got full credit if you got negative 8. In algebra and every math class you take the rest of your life, you have to prove your answer. So it's more than just saying I got this, but being able to prove it by showing I divided by negative 10 on both sides and I subtracted 14 on both sides. So if you have a negative 8, and do the distributive property correctly. So if I was grading this, there'd be 1 point for distributive property correctly, another point for subtracting 14 on both sides, another point for showing dividing both sides by negative 10, and a 4th point for the right answer. So if you just put negative 8, that's 1 out of 4. If you don't put any other, that's 25% on the question, but you got the right answer. So realize you cannot pass algebra, the class where you have to show how you got it. You can't pass that class without showing how you got it. So it's expected that you show every step, not stopping when you get to the point, well, I know the answer now, so I'm going to stop showing work. It's just confirming what you're already doing, and you're writing down what you're doing in your head. You're getting the answer by doing algebra. You're not just making it up, right? So write down what you're thinking, okay? And it'll be just fine. So that's how these are all graded. So of course, the bigger the equation, the more steps the equation have, the more points it's worth. So that would be worth 4 points if I was grading it. And you'd have to show each of those steps correctly to get all 4 points. Just so you understand what's expected. It's not multiple choice, so you have to show everything. You can't guess lucky and somehow get it. You can use a calculator, a regular calculator, nothing on a phone, no computer. So as you're doing this, make sure you know how to do it without any assistance, except for a calculator. I do see some people using SciMath and other websites to help out, which is fine. If you happen to be copying every problem down from there, guess what happens? You take this class again next semester and you actually learn how to do it. So you can learn how to do it this semester and finish it and move on, or if you don't, you retake it. It's not like you get, well, you did all your homework right because you copied it, but your tests and quizzes, you don't know how to do it. Yeah, you retake it until you do know how to do it. So if you're one of those that's kind of abusing it, using it too much, and if I asked you to redo a homework by yourself with no computer and you would have no clue how to do it, you better check yourself really fast because you don't want to be one of those that has to start all over. And there's usually like one, if at all. It's not a lot, but most people catch on like, yeah, tests are worth 70% of my grade. Homework is 15%. Don't be a homework hero and then not do well on tests. Okay, you have to know how to do it on your own, period. And we're going to know who's who. It's going to be very obvious if you have 100% on homework and you have a 30% on tests. Yeah, it's not bad luck. It's because you weren't really doing it to begin with. So keep that in mind. It'll just make you be honest a little bit. So I'm going to go through actually the left-hand column, front and back, and just do the first step, just to remind us how to get started. So let's go down 3. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18. Negative 6 times 7a is negative 42a. Now don't be alarmed if we have big numbers. Again, they will come out to be small answers that are whole numbers. So if you see a 42, I mean there's a chance that the other number is going to work itself out to 84. And when you divide, it'll come out to a nice, easy number. Okay. Just watch your negatives and positives as we go along. Going down to number 5, we have negative 7 times negative 7. 49, positive. Negative 7 times negative 3x, positive 21x. Bring down everything else. Bring down the minus 7, bring down the equals 126. And now we have a similar situation. We have two numbers on the same side. So we do a step just to simplify those. Negative 21 minus 7 is positive 14. And we bring everything else down. If anything else, oops, what did we miss here? Let's go back again. Yeah, there's a mistake. What did I miss? What's negative 7 times negative 3x? Negative 21x. So we don't want to combine these two. We want to combine negative 7 and 49. There we go. As soon as I saw there was no more variables, I'm like, wait a minute, something's wrong. I have to have an x. There's something missing here. So let's try this again. 49 minus 7 is 42. And then bring down everything else. Bring down the 21x equals 126. And you just keep on going. Subtract 42 on both sides. Divide both sides by 21. So it always turns back into basically a review equation. Which is nice because something like this, there's not like a ton of different type of concepts. It's really the same thing repeated. So you always get a lot of review on every assignment. On the last one? Yep. Subtract 42 both sides. And then divide by 21 both sides. Yeah. Okay. Alright, so let's just do a few more. This one. I will tell you the most common mistake is just your negatives, so just be careful on negatives. And then these two are both variables and are on the same side, so combine them. If it helps, you can make sure you know that's a negative 1. So negative 9x and negative 1x is negative 10x. And then bring down everything else. Negative 3. Negative 83, and then you can finish it up, add 3 to both sides, divide both sides by negative 10. Becomes a routine review problem. Let's skip down to the back. Let me show you the most common mistakes. Skip down to 15. Skip down to 15. 1-5. Okay, not a trick question, but sometimes hard to answer correctly. What number is in front of the parentheses? What number is in front of the parentheses on number 15? Negative 6. That's the hardest part, I think, about this whole assignment, is answering that question. Is looking at this right here and saying the number in front of the parentheses is negative 6. Not 6. But negative 6. If you remember anything, remember that, so that when you're doing your distributive property, it's negative 6 times 1. Not 6, but negative 6. So you get minus 6. And you do negative 6 times negative 6b, and you get positive 36b. So if you use positive 6 instead of negative 6, your signs will be all wrong, and the rest of the problem will be all wrong, simply by not identifying the number in front of the parentheses to be negative 6. So that is the most common mistake that we see. And every problem after this, I think, has this case in it. So you get a lot of practice. And then, of course, bring down everything else. Bring down 8b. Bring down equals 346. Now let's complete this all the way. So we have 8b plus 36b. What's 8 plus 36? 44b. And bring down everything else. You notice I have some bigger numbers in here, stuff that's in the hundreds now. We're not just playing around with simple, small, 18 and 17 and 9. We want to get some bigger numbers in here. But I guarantee they all come out to some nice, even answers. You might need a calculator. That's fine. You're allowed to use it, even on the test and quiz, as long as it's not a phone. And divide both sides by 44. I myself would not be able to do that on my head. I wouldn't like to do that doing a long division. Calculator is probably the best way to go. So if not, though, you can still show the work and do some trial and error to figure it out. So 352 divided by 44. I'm just going to type it in. Equals 8. But for you, you might use a calculator or do the long division to actually figure that out. Now on the quiz or test, they're not going to be that big of a number, just on the assignment. Okay. So I'm not going to set it up so you'd miss an algebra problem simply because of arithmetic. But for now, it's nice to practice with some bigger numbers and be okay with that. So if you count up the steps, how many steps did we have to do here? We had divide by 40, or we had the answer, that's 1 point. Divide by 44, that's 2 points. Add 6 to both sides, that's 3 points. We had to combine like terms, that's 4 points. Okay, and we had to distribute correctly, that's 5 points. So this is like a 5-step equation. Okay, 5 points. You have to show each step to get the full credit. So just make sure you're doing that and everything's shown. Okay, maybe just a few more, and then I'll let you guys work the rest of the period. Let's go to 19. Okay, one more time. What's the number in front of the parentheses? Negative 4. So now we're catching up. Negative 4. Good. As long as you do that, the rest of it will probably be okay. Okay. So negative 4 times 1. Negative 4 times negative 6p. One step done. Bring down everything else. And if anything else, and you got this down already, focus on your organization, your neatness, things like that. So it's very legible, easy to read. Anybody can follow it and understand what you did. Let's see here. Oh, this is we get a freebie here. It's a little bit easier. Because 4 minus 4 is 0. So we just have 24 times what equals negative 144. So we don't have to add or subtract to both sides because that equals 0, and we can go ahead and straight to division. Is the answer positive or negative? Yeah, so you know it's negative. So put the negative down, figure out what the number is, and then once you put it in there, you're not going to forget to put it. It's so sad when we get to the very end and people figure out, oh, 144 divided by 24, that equals 8, or equals 6, and then they forget the negative, the easy part. And so, but if you just forget it, you know, yeah, it's an issue. So I'll let you figure out what that equals and finish that up. Okay. Do we need to do more, or do you think we're good? Okay. Yeah, I think it's, like I said, the one step is new, the distributive property. After that, you know, steps 1 through 4, or 2 through 5, actually, those are all review. So just more good practice. If it's kind of getting dull and boring and too easy for you, that's a good problem to have and a good sign that you're on the right track. We will have a Khan Academy assignment, I think, with this in there, with some distributive property tomorrow. Then we'll review for your test, and then probably take the test on Friday. And it'll be ready to go, okay? So get started now. Come in tomorrow. We'll work on this a little bit more, and then I'll assign the Khan Academy assignment at the end of the period tomorrow. Okay, see you. Go ahead and get started.